Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Risk Matrix with myself and James Junkin. Here in our third season, we had our home opener a couple of weeks ago, and here we are again talking about risk and safety and all things related. Thank you to Veriforce for sponsoring us and for powering our foray into the podcast world and letting us bring on out there our opinions every week. So, James, here we are, Risk Matrix. What do you got ripped from the headlines?
Oh man, season 3, it's been a long run. And, when we sit down and talk about the episodes that we're going to do and just putting this new rip from the headlines, if you go back and look at some of our past podcasts, which we encourage you to do, and some of the past messaging, you continue to see repeated headlines, repeated topics, and why companies aren't understanding enforcement related to whistleblowers, I don't know. But just this past week, hot off the presses, January 8th, Department of Labor investigation finds Texas trucking company wrongfully terminated a driver for raising safety concerns. And so I caution people, if you are going to make an adverse employment action, you need the advice of counsel, particularly if there's some elements of safety involved. Get advice of counsel, because OSHA, the Department of Labor, not only investigates whistleblowers under the AIHA Act, they also are charged with investigating the 25 other different laws that pertain to whistleblowers. So you can get yourself in trouble very quickly with whistleblower retaliation. So if you're contemplating an adverse action related to anything with safety, I get advice of counsel and a qualified employment lawyer before I start doing that, because this can not only be fines and penalties, it can lead rise to litigation, which can even be more costly.
So let me ask you this, James, because this came up in my mind because I know that it's on the top of yours with some recent clients. Disciplinary policies, right? You have a safety incident or you have an OSHA inspection, and a lot of my clients, a lot of your clients have these disciplinary policies. And so what is your take on that? The use of the disciplinary policies and how to navigate those waters when it comes to whistleblowers or potential reporters of safety concerns.
Well, I think when you're implementing your disciplinary policy, number one, that policy needs to be written. Number one, it needs to give you flexibility and doesn't always say this will lead to that if you're unwilling to always do that. For example, some people say we have a zero tolerance policy for certain of these actions. That's fine, but make sure you're willing to implement that in those particular cases. Be fair and even in your application of discipline and document that. But you and I have been doing this long enough. Sometimes there are gray areas, Dr. Martin, right? I'm not an employment attorney. And you can have someone who's raised a safety concern, but maybe that safety concern was unjustified. Just because you raise a safety concern doesn't mean that you're correct in your assertion. I had a case like that. This person raised multiple safety concerns, but they were not legitimate safety concerns. We took them under advisement. We researched it. We did an investigation. We found that their concern was unfounded, right? And that led to an unfortunate workplace incident where this employee blew up. There was a lot of profanity, whatever, was terminated. Guess what? Now that we were defending a whistleblower action in which the employee alleged we retaliated against him because of raising safety concerns, it was unfounded. It went through an investigation. Doesn't sound like that's the case here, but have someone that you can call, because many times as a safety professional, I get calls about HR matters, and I'm not an HR person, right? So I always say get qualified legal advice before you take an adverse employment action against a worker if safety is involved.
Agreed. Don't know who to call. So along with our third season here, James, I want to roll right into this. every year so far, the first 2 years and now here in the third, we talk about what our outlook is for 2026. And I'd like to kick it off with some feedback that you had on an article that you wrote for LinkedIn. I think this is very important to plan now for your professional development. So I'm going to let you take this one because you wrote a good article on this, and let's advise some people on what to do. I'm a big fan of continuous learning, right? So I'm looking for opportunities all the time. What can people do to stay in the know and professionally develop?
Well, if you want to check that article out, it's posted over on my LinkedIn page. I think as safety professionals, we always should be trying to improve our skills, our knowledge, our abilities, continuous improvement, lifelong learning. There are a lot of opportunities to do that. What my article recommends is be focused and have a plan. In my life, it's total chaos all the time, right? I never really know what's happening because I live the life of consultant. We respond and react to the needs of our clients. So if we don't put it down on paper, we don't block it off the schedule, it's easy to get bumped. So my advice is look at what you want to do professionally in 2026, whether that's taking classes, whether that's watching webinars, podcasts that you might want to listen to, or going to conferences. You know, the conference season is right around the corner. I just want to give a shout out to some. The industrial hygienists have their conference, AIHA Connect, down here in New Orleans. It'll be June the 1st through the 3rd. ASSP, which I'll be at. Hey, we're headed to California. You remember that song, Going Back to Cali, to Cali, to Cali. We're going back to Cali. You know, ASSP 2026, June 15th to the 17th. VPPPA has their event over in August. I think it's late August, early part of September. And then the National Safety Congress and Expo on my birthday this year, September 11th, mine's the 12th through the 17th. It'll be up in Indianapolis. So look, picture what you want to do, get it down on paper, go ahead and register, get your plan in place, because if you don't, you may miss out on opportunities. Oh, I forgot one. BCSP has an online, what do they call
Exam
it?
core.
Global Summit. It's
Yep.
going to be online. It's $25. It's on demand. Some of it's live. I think it's the first week of June or something. I may be wrong on those dates, so I'm throwing it out there. You can go to the website, LinkedIn page, check it out. But for the cost versus the benefit, that's a good way to get professional development while you're sitting in your office.
Yeah. And
Not have
remember, there are other things like BCSP's exam core where you can get almost the lion's share of your points, right? To stay brushed up on different topics. My suggestion is if you go to some of these conferences and you hear about new technologies or new ways of thinking, that you drill down a little deeper than what a lot of these conference presenters get into. You know, you get in there, you get a little bit of a taste. They might scratch the surface, but if you get interested in something, to go online and research. How do you learn more, as opposed to just operating with a little bit of knowledge, right?
Right.
More knowledge is better.
If I can shout out to my friends over at Veriforce, we have a very comprehensive train the trainer program for instructors. That might be something you want to look at. Includes orientation and awareness level courses, but also competency-based courses that translate to a wide variety of industries. Look forward to, hey, check out my LinkedIn page. I'll be putting out when we have webinars for Veriforce, learning opportunities, etc. And of course, hey man, bookmark the Risk Matrix, baby, and subscribe every Tuesday. You're getting a wealth of knowledge from Dr. Martin and some sidekick commentary from myself, Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. All right, let's get into it. I've got a list and you've got a list. I'm going to start with the heat standard. Right, last year we talked a little bit about this. It was coming. It was coming. It was coming. We've got a new administration. It's still out there, but we are seeing some of the states take action on their own.
There are competing bills in Congress. There's a bunch of competing bills in Congress that don't have any chance of passing. You know, there's a bill out there to abolish OSHA. That's not going to happen. But on this particular heat situation. The federal standard, I don't know where it's going. It appears to be perhaps dead in the water. And so states are picking up the mantle. I agree with that. I think that's something to look at. Remember, federal enforcement can also happen under the general duty clause. You need to protect your workers. Really, the argument's not about protecting workers from heat. It's about the details within the law proposed standard. And we've talked about that before.
So I'm just going to say this. It's not all about outdoor work, right? It's about indoor work too. We're talking about bakeries and foundries and warehouses where things get really hot. I've been in some of these warehouses for clients, and I've seen some injuries result in it. So look at what's out there. There are some tech things now that exist that will help you know when to trigger rest breaks. They'll tell you what the heat index is, and they'll remove some of the judgment calls that are involved in heat stress. So think about putting in place a heat stress policy or a heat stress plan if you work on these larger construction sites or in a facility that heat's going to be an issue. And while we're talking about that, I know this doesn't apply down in Alabama, but up here, if you have heat stress in your safety program, your safety management system, you should also be thinking about cold stress. So James, what do you got on your list?
I bumped out there for a second. What's on my list for 2026? Is that Well, one of the things that we're wanting to emphasize with our clients is to continue to look at OSHA's top 10 and also the national emphasis programs to prepare for enforcement activities. So if you want to cut down on SIFs, you want to cut down on particular areas for citation and violation, hey, look at what OSHA's looking at. And so things that we've seen with the programmed inspections, amputations, falls is always one, trenching and excavation. You can check out the website for that. And of course, there is enhanced penalties going into 2026 to correspond with inflation.
Okay, I'm going to give you a third one here, and it's not my favorite, right? AI and computer vision, right? We talk about it every year. I'm not a big fan of running right out and buying AI right now. It's changing so quickly. But the trend is no more cameras just for security, right? We're using computer vision that looks at feeds in real time and detects hazards, looks at PPE compliance. They look at fall situations, accidents, analyzes stuff like that. So there is the software out there. You just have to do a really good vetting process on what you're looking at and, identify where the weaknesses are. We all love the strengths. That's what the salespeople tell us about, right? Are all the strengths. But there are some weaknesses to that. And you need to remember that it doesn't remove you as a safety professional from the situation, right? Your clients are going to ask. My clients ask, right? What AI can I be using to make this better, faster, cheaper, more robust? But again, I caution you to look at both sides of every issue here and make sure that the AI that you do advise your clients to buy or that you buy for your company, the weaknesses.
Well, I think one of the things that people should start thinking about if we're going to integrate AI into the workplace, and that's been the conversation with nearly every company that we provide consulting services for, is how can we integrate AI more into the workplace? There needs to be some guardrails around that. NIA should put out some options to help manage AI in the workplace. There needs to be ethical considerations around the use of AI and guardrails. The U.S. Department of Labor is saying if it's a consequential action, which they don't really define consequential, but if it could lead to worker injury or illness, certainly that would be something I would consider to be consequential. You need to be transparent and have some oversight when it comes to that use of AI. Consequential actions, training program development. To me, that's a consequential action. What we're telling workers they need to do. And we use AI in our business. AI has been great as far as data collection, research. It's an outstanding research tool. But you got to go back and you have to check it. And for all you would-be students out there, if you're going to use AI as your research tool, you better go check those sources and make sure that where you say you're getting it from is actually where it comes from.
Yeah.
Um,
So let me give you a little thing that I read yesterday as somebody who works in higher education off and on. A lot of the professors and even companies are having to deal with their employees doing their research with AI, and in the universities what they're doing now is they're having people write things with AI, but then the assignment is actually to check it. The assignment is how well can you research this to back up what the AI says, right? So I think that's a good approach to
good approach.
what you're doing, right? Great data collection tool. Not disputing that it can't collect the data. What I worry about is the analysis and the amount of time that safety professionals are putting into checking it.
Well, we had a situation with a client pre-qualifying for a large construction company just yesterday, right? A lot of the policies and procedures we had sent and drafted in conjunction with them that were company specific. Whatever process they used on that side as part of pre-qual, they said they used an AI tool and came back with all these gaps. Well, here's the problem. Once we sat down with their gap report and our policy, didn't make sense. We're like, no, it's here, it's here, it's here. We addressed all those things. So how you ask the AI to support your operations, I think that's something that people need to think that understand. It's decision support. It shouldn't be making the decision. Not
Yeah,
yet.
we talked
Don't
about
let the AI make decisions.
we talked about this a little bit before we came on air, but a lot of my colleagues are taking courses in prompt engineering, right? And prompt engineering is basically how you ask AI and in what depth you ask AI for what you're looking for, right? Where there are gaps, AI will fill in. That's a lot of times in scientific stuff or in things that really matter. You don't want somebody filling in the gaps, right? So, one of the things that you could do as part of your professional development, if you're using AI tools, is to look at um, how to prompt engineer. And I know LinkedIn has a course in it. I know there's some free Coursera
Seen that.
courses out there that you can take, but I'd highly recommend that you take something in a prompt engineering if you're going to use AI on the regular. So next on my list, James, and I mention this, I think, every year too, lone worker and remote worker safety. Tools are getting better all the time. We should be using them. I haven't seen a lot of companies pick these up. I don't know in the oil field if they're using them more and more. But what are the check-in intervals? How are we looking at what their health is while they're conducting these tasks? I mean, I worry about some of these things, but I don't see any of the tools that are being used on the regular in industry yet.
Yeah, I know there are tools that are available. I'm with you. I don't see a lot of implementation. At best, I see a policy that people really aren't following. Um, when we think of lone worker, a lot of times we think way out in the boonies, someplace performing tasks. But we had a client that had a contractor have a incident where the employee actually died. The contractor employee died on the job site in a tragic workplace incident. And because there wasn't a lone worker procedure to check on this person, it was actually his family that discovered him dead
Wow.
on the location for the hiring client, which is awful, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, we learned from that. We put a lot of guardrails around lone worker as far as check-ins, continuous check-ins, hazard identification, because lone workers have their own hazards. It brings up their own hazards, right? So
Yep.
I think that's something. If you have lone workers, we need to think about why do we have lone workers, what those hazards are, and how we're checking on those workers to not only ensure compliance with our policies, but what happens in the event of an emergency.
Yeah. Well, let me just put this out there, right? Back in the day when I started, and probably when you started working after you got out of the military, we didn't have cell phones, right? We
Mm-mm.
not everybody had a cell phone, but let me tell you, this past week, Verizon had a major outage, mostly out here on the eastern seaboard, somewhat on the west coast too, and somewhere in the middle of the country, major cities. I only had SOS service. I don't even think I probably had that, although my phone was saying it. I couldn't get texts in and out, and I couldn't make calls, right? For me, I mean, I consider myself a lone worker because I work for myself and I work for
Right.
clients, but I could not get a hold of anybody. And by the end of the day, believe it or not, my 85-year-old mother was frantic because she couldn't get a hold of me. So have a contingency for how you're going to make touch with your employees should something like that happen, because it does, right? And that network was out for over 8 hours.
Yeah, I saw that, and I did not realize, but I'm like, man, nobody's calling today. I'm getting a lot of work done, not talking on the phone. Began to wonder what was going on, then find out, Verizon was down.
Yeah.
Uh,
So don't rely on the cellular service as your one sole means of getting through, because sometimes that fails too. What's next on your list, James?
well, I think again, as someone who's responsible for the safety management system, you need to have an eye on the regulatory, what I call deregulatory cleanup, if you will, that's happening. OSHA put out about 25 proposed rule changes. A lot of them are rolling back. We did episodes last year about this. You can roll back to it and get the details, but things like the general duty clause clarifying it, respiratory protection related to the medical evaluation, some of those for certain respirators. Keep an eye on what's happening, because you may have to adjust your policies for that if you want to be in congruence with OSHA's enforcement guidelines, if you will. So I'm just saying, if you want to continue to do medical evals for N95s and things of that nature, you certainly can do that. But if they decide in the proposed rule that it's no longer necessary, you need to adjust your policy so you do what you say you're going to do.
Agreed.
You can always be more restrictive.
So what's been on our radar for the last couple of years, and I feel like we're repeating stuff over and over, but things are growing in the field of mental health. We talk a lot about psychological safety and psychosocial hazards, especially with our friend Dr. Daniels. Um, people are becoming more aware of what people's mindset is and how they get the work done and how they get the work done safely. And so, to that end, you and I have been doing more and more of these psychosocial, psychological safety uh, interviews and with our clients, and helping them understand what the barriers are for them for getting work done. The barriers are sometimes the same among workers, but sometimes you may find some outliers. So, it's very important to know what things have a bearing on your work and how it's performed. And I think mental health is one of those things that is going to stay in the forefront through 2026.
Dr. Daniels, we were in a meeting with the Veriforce Strategic Advisory Board last month, I believe, and he made some interesting observations that globally the research for psychological safety and health is coming out of the U.S., but the enforcement's globally, the implementation's globally. Like the lessons are being learned here, but we're struggling applying them, particularly from a regulatory standpoint. Absent regulation, many times you won't see implementation. The OSHA Act is really focused on physical hazards. OSHA is not in the context of the OSHA Act to be able to address mental health and psychological safety hazards, if you will, uh, as aggressively as countries like Australia are, right? But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And there have been cases where OSHA citations have been upheld because of stress, mental health issues, PTSD, if you will, related to incidences in cases where workers have suffered because of something that's happened at work. But regardless of what the enforcement activities are, having a workplace where people feel welcome, they feel they're able to voice their concerns, whether they're safety or whether they're productive, just makes good business sense. So it's just a little disappointing to hear that there's a lot of great research coming out of the U.S., but we're lagging a little bit behind on the implementation of actually putting structures in place at the workplace that improve the psychosocial aspects of workers' environments.
Agreed. Next on your list?
I'm about wrapped up on my list. I would say, sort of in summary, as a safety professional, we talked about developing a personal plan. You also should have a plan for where you want to go with your safety management system this year. A lot of times as safety professionals, we can get caught in the rut of Groundhog Day. Every day is like the next day. So maybe we want to redo our training programs and blow the dust off of them a little bit. People get tired of seeing the same examples, the same pictures, whatever. So refreshing, keeping those evergreen. Maybe it's new hazard assessments. Maybe it's new technology. Maybe it's professional development and leadership training for our frontline safety leaders. Whatever it is,
put it on the calendar.
Put it on the calendar. Because if you don't, it's not going to happen.
Totally agree. Well, that's our outlook for 2026. I'm sure there are going to be more things that come on our radar as we move forward. We'll be bringing those things to you as we monitor kind of OSHA and some of the regulatory things that are changing. We are planning on having several guests on for those of you who look forward to our future. Several guests on to talk about consulting, because James and I are always yapping our traps about consulting and talking about what we do for our clients and some of the services that we provide. We do have a big network of people that would like to share their insight and their stories with you. So we'll be bringing that on as we go into the new year. But thank you so much to everybody who listens to us. We hope that you subscribe and you like and you comment on our both our podcast links on LinkedIn, on YouTube, where we also are, Spotify. Hey Alexa, play the Risk Matrix podcast. Anywhere that you can listen, we're there. James, you want to take us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you all for what you do, for being loyal listeners of the podcast. Again, the challenge is, if you learned something today, you must like and subscribe. If you enjoyed our podcast today, you must like and subscribe. If you love college football, you must like and subscribe. I am sad that it is over, but hey, it'll come back, baby. Until next time, keep doing what you do to bring workers home safe from hazardous jobs. Till then, out.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.